They say awareness is a blessing, but no one warns you about its weight. The truth is, when you begin to see too deeply to notice what others don't, life quietly changes. You walk into a room and you feel it before a word is spoken. The tension behind laughter, the sadness behind a smile, the loneliness that lingers in a crowd. You sense what others can't, and once you do, there's no going back. That's the silent burden of awareness. It doesn't leave scars on the body, but it reshapes the soul. You stop living inside the world's illusions. You no longer move in sync with the easy rhythm of small talk, polite smiles, or unexamined joy. You see through it all, the layers of performance, the practiced cheerfulness, the subtle dishonesty that keeps life comfortable. Everyone else seems to play along, unaware of the script. But you've read the hidden lines. And suddenly, the play isn't fun anymore. You begin to notice it everywhere, in the way someone's eyes dart away mid-sentence, in the forced laugh of a friend who's quietly breaking in the silence that follows a question no one wants to answer. The world becomes transparent, and what once felt warm and simple now feels fragile and haunted. There's beauty in that truth, yes, but also sorrow. Because to see deeply is to know how much pain hides inside ordinary life. At first, you think something's wrong with you. You try to turn it off to shrink your perception back to normal size. You tell yourself, maybe I'm overreacting, maybe I'm too sensitive. You force yourself into conversations, pretend to care about weather, traffic, gossip, anything simple. But you can't unsee what you've already seen. The curtain has been pulled back. You know the truth hiding beneath people's rehearsed words, and every attempt to ignore it feels like betrayal. People start to feel your difference before you say a word. They sense your attention, that quiet intensity that notices too much. It makes them uncomfortable, though they may not understand why. Your presence becomes a mirror that reflects what they'd rather not see. They might call you too serious, too deep, too intense. But what they really mean is you see me too clearly. And so without malice, they retreat. You don't lose people through arguments. You lose them through awareness. That's how the isolation begins. Not through rejection, but through perception. You become an island of honesty in a sea of denial, and it's exhausting to swim against that current. You long to connect, yet you can't play the game anymore. You can't laugh at what feels false, can't nod along to what you know is untrue. The more clearly you see, the more alone you feel. And still, awareness grows. You begin to sense the emotional weather of every space you enter, the subtle pressure in the air, the vibration of unspoken thoughts. Sometimes it feels like walking through fog made of other people's feelings. You leave rooms carrying emotions that aren't yours, someone's sadness, someone's fear, someone's hidden shame. You try to shake it off, but it lingers, a heaviness you can't name. It's empathy without boundaries, compassion without rest. The strange part is, most people will never understand what's happening inside you. To them, you look normal. You smile, you talk, you function. But within, you're carrying invisible noise, 1,000 frequencies of emotion, all playing at once. It's not madness. It's sensitivity tuned too high. And if you don't learn to ground it, it begins to erode you from within. You start mistaking everyone else's sorrow for your own. There's a moment every awakened soul faces, that quiet night when you sit alone and whisper, "I wish I could unsee." Not because you reject truth, but because truth without peace becomes unbearable. You wish you could return to the soft blindness that others enjoy, the ease of not knowing, the comfort of pretending. But life doesn't let you go backward. Once the eyes of the heart open, they stay open. And so the question changes. It's no longer, how do I stop seeing? It becomes, how do I live peacefully with what I see? That's where real wisdom begins. Because awareness is not the problem, attachment is. The pain doesn't come from perceiving too much. It comes from trying to fix what you perceive. You see pain and feel responsible for healing it. You notice chaos and feel compelled to restore order. But the world's suffering was never meant to rest entirely on your shoulders. There's a difference between awareness and absorption. To be aware is to witness the storm. To absorb is to drown in it. The first brings compassion. The second brings despair. Learning that difference is the first step toward peace. You begin to understand that your job is not to carry every truth you see, only to recognize it, to let it pass through you like wind through open hands. And when you finally stop fighting your own clarity, something shifts. The sharpness of your vision softens. You begin to see not just pain, but also beauty. The quiet courage behind struggle, the tenderness behind fear, the love hiding inside mistakes. You realize that awareness doesn't separate you from humanity. It connects you to it more deeply than ever before. So if you've ever felt the weight of seeing too deeply, if you've ever wished for blindness just to rest, know this: you're not broken. You're becoming. The loneliness you feel isn't punishment. It's refinement. You're learning to see without judgment, to feel without being consumed, to love without needing to fix. And that is the first truth of clear vision. It isn't about seeing more. It's about seeing truly, not through the eyes of fear, but through the quiet compassion of understanding. The burden becomes lighter the moment you stop resisting it. Because awareness was never meant to crush you. It was meant to awaken you, to make you gentle and strong, and finally at peace with the depth of what you see. The moment you begin to see clearly, life stops being simple. Awareness feels like light at first, pure, beautiful, illuminating. But what no one tells you is that light also casts shadows. And when you wake up, you don't just see truth. You also see everything that truth exposes. The first danger is isolation. When you perceive what others can't, you drift into a quieter world. Conversations that once felt lively now feel empty. People talk, but you hear the spaces between their words, the hesitation, the fear, the pretending. You no longer belong to the same emotional rhythm. And that distance grows, not because you choose it, but because truth naturally separates the sleeping from the awake. You might think, if I explain what I see, they'll understand. But awareness cannot be transferred through words. It's like trying to describe color to someone who's never seen light. They nod politely, but their eyes stay closed. You start to sound strange too, intense, too serious. Not because you are, but because your perception unsettles their comfort. And so people pull back, slowly, quietly, until you find yourself on the edge of the circle watching everyone pretend life is fine. That's when the second danger appears: doubt. You start questioning yourself. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm overreacting. Maybe I've invented all this meaning. And if you let that doubt sink deep enough, it can turn into self-betrayal. Because every time you ignore what your intuition shows you, every time you accept a lie just to belong, a small part of your integrity dies. The world feels easier, but your inner compass begins to crack. The third danger is projection. When you can see hidden pain in others, you might feel called to fix it, to comfort, to advise, to rescue. You step in where silence should have been. And before you realize it, you're carrying problems that were never yours. You start believing that compassion means intervention, but true compassion often means restraint, the strength to let others face their own darkness. Awareness without boundaries is like standing in the rain without shelter. You end up soaked in emotions that don't belong to you. You wake up drained, confused, wondering why you're exhausted after doing nothing. The reason is simple. You've been living as an emotional sponge. You've absorbed more than your spirit can process. And if you keep doing that, The line between me and them dissolves. Then comes the fourth danger: resentment. You begin to feel angry at the world for not seeing what you see. Angry that others laugh while you stand knee-deep in truth. Angry that awareness feels like punishment when it was supposed to be a gift. But that anger doesn't serve you. It only builds walls. The world doesn't need more walls. It needs people who can see clearly and still stay kind. Each of these dangers, isolation, doubt, projection, resentment, are not signs that something is wrong with you. They're simply the growing pains of consciousness. Every soul that wakes up walks through them. But most turn back before crossing the threshold because clarity without wisdom hurts. The goal isn't to stop seeing, it's to learn how to carry what you see. So how do you do that? It begins with stillness. Awareness without stillness becomes chaos. You must give your perception room to breathe, to settle, to find its center. Spend time in quiet places, not to escape the world, but to remember what part of the world is truly yours. When you sit long enough with yourself, the noise fades and your awareness sharpens without consuming you. The next step is acceptance. Not everything you notice is meant to be changed. Some truths are simply meant to be witnessed. You see pain, and instead of rushing to heal it, you let your compassion observe it gently. You see lies, and instead of tearing them down, you understand why people need them. You see fear, and instead of rejecting it, you soften toward it. In that softness, awareness transforms from a weapon into wisdom. And then comes the deepest lesson: detachment without indifference. To care deeply without controlling. To love fully without rescuing. To see truth without needing to correct it. This is the art of awakened living. You learn to stand inside chaos with a calm heart, to witness suffering without becoming its prisoner. Awareness stops feeling like fire and begins to feel like light. Because in the end, clarity doesn't demand that you fix the world. It asks that you hold space for it, to keep your eyes open when others close theirs. To stay kind in a world that confuses numbness with peace. To see reality as it is and still believe in what it could become. This is not weakness. It's spiritual maturity, the ability to see clearly without bitterness, to understand without judgment, to know and still love. Awareness, when carried unconsciously, can destroy your peace. But when held with understanding, it becomes your greatest protection. It's not the seeing that hurts, it's the resistance to what you see. And once that resistance fades, your vision becomes clear again, gentle and steady like sunlight moving across water. So if you've ever felt the danger of awareness, the loneliness, the fatigue, the longing for simple ignorance, remember this: you are not being punished. You are being shaped. Life is refining your sight, teaching you to look with grace instead of fear. The danger of awareness is real. But so is the gift hidden within it, the gift of seeing truth and still choosing love. Awareness was never meant to be your prison. It was meant to be your awakening. The pain you felt, the loneliness, the confusion, the exhaustion, they were not punishments. They were lessons in learning how to see without suffering. The first step is understanding this: you do not have to carry everything you notice. Seeing someone's pain does not mean you must heal it. Recognizing darkness does not mean you must chase it away. The world's emotions are rivers passing through you, not oceans you must drown in. You are allowed to let things flow without trying to change their course. That's not coldness. That's wisdom. Most suffering in awareness comes from the impulse to fix. The moment you sense something broken, your heart leaps forward wanting to repair it. But when you do, you often steal from others the sacred work of their own growth. Every soul has its own timing, its own journey. You cannot awaken someone by force, not even with love. Awareness matures when you learn the art of allowing life to unfold without your control, allowing people to evolve in their own rhythm. The second step is creating sacred distance, the kind that protects your peace without closing your heart. Imagine awareness as light passing through glass. If the glass is too thick, nothing shines through. But if it's too thin, it shatters under the heat. Boundaries are that perfect balance, not walls, but clarity about where you end and others begin. When you remember that their story is not yours to live, compassion becomes lighter. You stop absorbing emotions like a sponge and start reflecting them like a mirror, seeing clearly but staying intact. The third step is stilling the mind. The deeper you see, the quieter you must become. Clarity thrives in silence. If you fill awareness with judgment or fear, it clouds again. So take moments each day to return to yourself, not to escape, but to realign. Sit with your breath. Feel the weight leave your shoulders. Let everything you've absorbed flow out like mist dissolving in morning light. This is how the soul rinses itself clean. And then comes the most subtle step of all, accepting imperfection. When you see too clearly, the world can seem unbearably flawed. You notice hypocrisy, greed, cruelty. You see how people hurt each other in their blindness. It's tempting to despair, to say, "What's the point?" But that's when true vision begins. Awareness that cannot hold imperfection is still half asleep. Real awakening is learning to look at the brokenness of life and still see its sacredness shining through. It's the ability to whisper, "Even this is part of the whole." Because seeing deeply is not about separating light from dark. It's about realizing they belong to the same sky. Awareness is not a sword. It's a lamp. It doesn't cut, it illuminates. When you stop using perception to divide and start using it to understand, the suffering begins to fade. You stop fighting reality and start flowing with it, one breath, one truth, one quiet acceptance at a time. There's a moment in every journey when clarity softens. You stop needing to be right. You stop needing to be understood. You stop needing the world to wake up with you. You simply live awake but gentle, aware but at peace. You become like a candle in a dark room. You don't shout at the darkness, you just shine. And the more you live this way, the more life begins to trust you with its subtler truths. You notice that not everything is heavy. You start to sense beauty woven inside pain, grace hidden in mistakes, love waiting beneath fear. You realize that awareness was never about what you see. It was about how you see. When your gaze becomes compassionate, even sorrow turns into wisdom. So if you've carried the burden of awareness for too long, if you've grown tired of being the one who sees, know this, it's safe to rest now. You don't have to close your eyes. You just have to stop fighting what they show you. Let clarity become your peace instead of your weight. Let perception serve understanding instead of control. There is a quiet strength in those who see but do not suffer, who feel but do not break. They walk through the noise of the world like still water, reflecting everything, clinging to nothing. That is the art of conscious living. Not escaping pain, but allowing it to pass through without leaving scars. And when you finally master this art, when you can see the truth and remain kind, when you can feel the depth of life and still stay light, that's when awareness fulfills its purpose. It no longer isolates you. It connects you to everything. You look at the world, and instead of asking, "Why is it so blind?" you whisper, "How beautiful that it still tries to see." In the end, awareness was never dangerous. Only unconsciousness was. The more gently you hold your perception, the more it blesses you. The clearer you see, the softer you become. Because love in its purest form is simply this, the ability to see everything clearly and still choose to forgive it all.